Yun.
Yun tayo, Pats. Tara.
Eh,
Oh yeah, I'll admit everybody's intentions are not.
Yun, no?
Hello. Good evening. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming around the bonfire. It's nice to be back. Last time, di ako nakasali. Medyo naging busy, no? Pero we thank you to JD and Pats who was able to interview, no? Sino yung na-interview natin last time? That was EJ, no? Of Taksumo. Now, tonight, we are uh, equally excited and wanted to get the ball rolling by welcoming a very, very good friend, an amazing person, and joy to work with. No, and I've known her for a very long time. Been very impressed with her work ethic, her sharpness and wit. No, and without further ado, I'd like to welcome the CEO of AllCare Technologies, Cindy Burdette. Hi, Cinds.
Hello, hello,
Hello,
good
hello.
evening.
Kumusta?
Pasensya na, pasensya na nasa isang alcoholic place ako. Hindi, joke lang. Okay naman.
Oh,
It's been a
ah,
long day.
kamusta ano mo? Kamusta yung week mo? Well, kamusta yung week mo? Ay, weekend mo pala.
Okay naman. As you probably know, I don't hold back on weekends. So, Sabado was our final practice for my upcoming trip. And then Sunday, had a couple of client meetings.
Grabe, wala talagang pahinga, eh, no? Sige, let's get the ball rolling, no? So maybe thank you for coming to Around the Bonfire, and I guess this show is just really about understanding people who are into product development, not necessarily product managers, but even CEOs, no? So you want to know where you started. So how did you start your career since? Maybe you can talk a bit about your initial career path.
Sure. So fresh out of college, I actually applied in several management trainee programs. I guess being an Atenean, common sa atin mag-a-apply sa Nestle, Unilever, Procter& and Gamble, di ba? And unfortunately, I didn't make the final cut in many of those uh, firms, but I did make the final cut to a telco company, a relatively unknown telco company called Sun Cellular. Um, and then, interestingly, I really enjoyed working in telco kasi nga medyo may pagka-toxic yung environment ng telco. Very fast-moving, you're on the edge always with what your competitors will be doing, what they're launching, and how you're gonna respond. So, absolutely enjoyed it. I joined the corporate communications team, but part of our scope of work is actually uh, digital channels. So my capstone project in my time there was actually launching the first ever centralized digital communication channel for Sun Cellular that uses the call center of Sun to respond to Twitter and Facebook. And I remember ako pa gumawa ng landing page sa Facebook. Gumagamit pa ng FBML, no? So, wow, napakaluma na ng FBML. Tapos tapos yun, from there, parang sobrang na-enjoy ko digital tech, marketing, um, except kasi medyo baby pa yung Sun Cellular in that space. So, I could hardly get any budget to innovate. So, I left that company and I joined a budding advertising agency that wanted to build a digital arm. So I joined it as one of its leaders. And then again, had a blast working there. I actually started servicing the competitor telco. Tapos, ayun, yun, walang only budget yun eh, di ba? The green and red guys, they had unlimited budget. So we got to play a lot. Like we did a lot of great work. And then naturally, just went up the ladder, joined another bigger firm. And that's when parang I felt, I reached sort of like a ceiling. And timely naman, a friend, si Ethel, she recommended me to Peter of Storm and to ask if I was interested in joining client side. in this budding startup. You had that startup had just raised its Series A, and they were professionalizing their executive team. Diba? So I joined as initially head of marketing, and then very quickly, Peter gave me the role of business development or sales. Yan. And then from there, ano na, para it just snowballed into everything like commercial operations, exploration into another market, which is China, different products, going into crypto, like, and all sorts of things until I landed where I landed.
Sobrang wild nga nung story na yun, eh. Pag naririnig ko siya parati parang roller coaster siya, eh. So I guess I want to delve a bit deeper on that. Yung next step actually since is, how did you go from working, well, corporate world, pero eventually naging startup yung naging environment mo. So how did you make the leap and suddenly decide na, oh, I want to eventually, or I want to build my own thing? Baka pwede mo ikwento yun.
Actually, one of the I want to say sad things, but one of the regrets that I have had in my college years was I didn't really take entrepreneurship seriously. Considering sa Ateneo, this is one of the things that they promote, diba? GG Somba and all of that, and all of those accelerator programs. But I always thought I had the knack for being creative and creatively problem solving. And so when I was in Storm, I opened up my first ever business. Kasi diba, if you remember, I was di lang little, I was really overweight, and parang I was trying to lose weight. And one of the things that I saw was maybe I should cut out carbs and sugar, right? And my dad being a chef, parang I had a knack for cooking. So I started cooking my own meals that were ketogenic. And then sabi ko, parang walang nag-offer nito. This was in 2015. So while working, I started the Good Kitchen. I don't know if you still remember that. Yun. And then that got so famous. It got featured in magazines. It got featured by the SM group. And then somebody offered me to open up a commissary. That's when I closed it. Medyo natakot ako eh kasi parang I was still working, I had still real responsibilities. I had committed with Peter to really stay on and work out the goals of all of Storm at the time. So parang there was just no way I was gonna go full-time entrepreneur. How did I make that transition? Siguro yun, parang I've always been a creative problem solver. So kunyari, in that case of the Good Kitchen nga, since I knew na there wasn't anybody offering it and I was already making it for myself, and then my friends started asking if I could cook for them. Kasi nakita nila pumayat na ako eh. For Pats, I used to weigh 210 pounds. So, to give you an idea. And then, my friends were saying, like, how are you losing weight so fast? What are you eating? And I told them, oh, I just eat what I cook. And then they're like, can you cook for me? I'll pay you. And then from there, it just got bigger. Yun. And then from there, so napatunayan ko na kaya kong magbenta. Yun yung una. Kaya kong magbenta at kaya kong gumawa ng produkto. And then when the opportunity to do something for AllCare came up, I already built some traction for AllCare, fundraising for it, right? Developing the product. We had a very interesting MVP story. But it just made sense na I would be the one to take it off the ground. And yun yung parang medyo startup entrepreneur journey na meron ako. So it's not quite the same as many startup founders. Very designated survivor yung peg ko eh, di ba? Parang ako yung naiwan na last one standing, really standing up for what the future of work and benefits could be. So, ganun siya.
Sa tagal na di ko alam yung dad mo, chef. Chef okay. Interesting tidbit. I learned something new every day. So, I think so sa pag ano mo no, sa pag-reflect mo on your so you started out no, parang marketing and then eventually business development and eventually nag-transition ka into being the CEO of your own company. What did you see na you mentioned earlier yung skills that translated, no, when you became a CEO, parang creative problem solving, all of these things. Kung tanungin kita, ano yung bago mong natutunan or ano yung mga skills na feeling mo you had to learn when you became a CEO?
I would say unang-una na parang talagang I felt pressured to learn was financials, no? So, obviously sa marketing at saka sa sales may mga numbers ka din pero ibang-iba. So, being a CEO, meron tayong mga bagay like unit economics na kailangan bantayan, yung iyong profitability ratio, yung cost of incremental revenue, very technical stuff na wala naman nagturo sa akin. So parang had to learn that the hard way by, going to investors and then them asking for it and I would be like, oops, I don't know what that is. And then going back and say, can somebody teach me what this means? That's one. So financials talaga was something that I had to learn. The other one was, I would say, parang a formal, I wouldn't say training, but a serious focus on product development. Kasi when I first started as officially the head of AllCare, my first hire was a graphic designer. I don't know if you remember this. Si oh my gosh, I forget her name. Basta magaling siya kumanta. Tapos
Kuya siya
the
maalala.
but the reason for that was because I knew what I wanted in the product. I knew how to sell it. I knew how to market it. I just couldn't design for the life of me. So my first hire was a graphic designer. But then, dumating sa point na, okay, so mukhang may potential to. How do we start? Right. Buti na lang, meron akong konting background in development, software development from my previous work in advertising. We did many mobile apps, many websites, many ERPs beyond beyond what I would be happy to, to share. Pero so make a BRD, test it out, ganyan, work with your developers to plan it out. Pero yung parang, kunyari, product roadmap, yung feedback loop, being agile enough to change your backlog and stuff, um, wala ako nun eh. So, it took some time before when people would ask me, so what do you see as the product roadmap for this all care? Parang, good question. So yan. So those would be the two na talagang parang uh, medyo kasi everything else parang I just based off a simple concept like people management. I want to manage how I want to be managed, right? And
Mm.
if I can hire people that are smart, they would be somebody like me in the sense that they would want some freedom to execute, they want some space and ability to think on their own and brainstorm with you. So I didn't really like micromanagement. So if I hired somebody na type A, di ba, A player na tinatawag natin, I knew that I didn't have to micromanage them. So parang medyo common sense para sa akin yung people management. So it was really those, the financial side and the what you call that, people or product development
Product.
medyo
Got it. And sige, Pats, maybe you can talk a bit and ask Cindy some questions about product.
Yeah, thanks, Dino. Hi, Sin. So you mentioned kanina no, na after college, you tried to apply for like management trainee programs and then eventually like joining Sun Cellular. So, and ngayon, all care, medyo malaking leap yun from telco to healthcare. So what made you focus on the healthcare industry and what problems did you observe no that you made you feel you could help solve the problem?
Okay, good question. Honestly, I think there is some misconception going around that startup founders and entrepreneurs have to love the industry that they get into. And oh my gosh, like people hearing this might say, "Oh my gosh, Cindy, this is sacrilege." But honestly, a real entrepreneur doesn't have to love the problem to want to solve it, right? I don't think so at least. Um, having been at the forefront of employee benefits in my time in Storm, one of our jobs was to always look out for trends, right? And one of the trends we saw was, ay, parang lumalaki yung gig economy, lumalaki yung freelancer movement. Again, this was back in 2015. So, freelancer, Odesk, they were booming. Uh, and doon nag-start din yung conversations around tenure, right? And so parang, oh, that's gonna be a long-term problem for companies. So all of those trends. And we saw na there's a big chunk of the workforce that actually don't have a specific title as an employee. And so, given Storm's product, Storm cannot solve that problem. But if you have a bunch of entrepreneurs in the room presented with an opportunity, they're not gonna say, "Oh, we have to love this product, so we can solve it." Like if a problem's in front of you and you love challenges, you love business challenges, you love innovation, the natural thing to do is uh, to build to build something and test around that concept, diba? And see if it bites. And so I don't want to be a hypocrite and say that I actually love the benefit space, but I love that we can help people. So I guess that's a very different case, right? I don't necessarily um, I'm not in love with the idea of worker benefits, but I love the idea of equality and equity and fairness and access. So AllCare's role is to be that access, right? To be that bridge to provide access. So, whatever the form that it takes, whether it's healthcare, whether it's training, or whether it's mental health, whatever the form is, if it's going to increase wellness, if it's going to increase equitable experience across different types of worker, then I'm gonna be there. So yun yung parang leap. And then if you really think about it, it wasn't much of a leap outside of the change in industry because being in telco requires that you're always at the pulse of the customer. You're always at the forefront of innovation. You're always looking at trends overseas and then what's happening here. I distinctly remember this one story where the chairman of the Red and Green group wanted us to launch what was then the first ever LTE SIM card. So you can imagine how long this must have been, right? Kasi ngayon parang joke na LTE pag anak, dapat 5G. Actually, may iscom pa kami nun kasi 5G yung sinabi sa amin. So this was in 2014, I think, 2013. And we launched a campaign around LTE. So, 'di ba, parang before we were able to create communication, we had to make sure the product was right, it was really working, ganyan. So, in a way, may pagka-entrepreneurial approach din yun tapos technology. So, hindi siya ganun ka-different. Ang siguro masasabi ko number one difference from my time there and my time here is now, I have a fiduciary responsibility to my investors to make sure we are steering the ship in the best possible way. And then at the same time, we actually have a direct relationship with customers where I feel responsible for. Kasi nung nandun ako sa agency, ultimately it was the telco company that had that responsibility. So parang medyo pagpalpa kami, okay lang medyo mag-hands off, di ba? Pero in this case, as part of All Care, when I get, because I don't know if you know this guys, but I still get all the customer emails, right? I still receive those mga concerns, especially on Messenger. And I like seeing them because it keeps me close to the customer pulse. So when I see a negative feedback, I take that to heart kasi for me parang, oh shucks, we're not doing our jobs. Parang, oh, there's a problem in the product that needs to get fixed right away. So yun, so I would say yun yung mga key differences.
Got it, got it. So, yeah, pinag-uusapan na natin na, yeah, you already made that leap, no? So, my question is, how did you develop your product? And were there former iterations before coming up with it?
Yeah, I mean, actually, minsan di ko na alam ano itsura talaga no. And that's a testament to how good the people around me are because they don't need me to make decisions on how to evolve the product, diba? But the very, very first iteration, which was our MVP, was just a website. And I remember this very, very distinctly. Our MVP was just a website that said, we want to provide employee benefits for the non-employed. and it would have something like this. It's going to be around this price. If you want to buy this when it comes out, could you give us your name and email address and mobile phone? And I remember there was a big event in Metro 10 called Manila Workshops that had like 2,000 freelancers in the tent, and I was speaking about this thing called ALLCARE. On those two events, so dalawang magkasunod na event yon over a span of a week, about 550 people signed up
Mhm.
in that website. So parang ako, oh, I guess this is a real problem that people want to get fixed. No? So that was the first iteration. And then when we were ready to go to market, now we're gonna build the product. I asked my friends from a software company, and I said, "Would you guys mind building this? Except I can't pay you yet." Um, and I remember they looked at me like, "Yeah, you look kind of trustworthy." And it seems like if something screwed up, you'd find a way to pay for it. Okay, sige, we'll build it for you. And I remember, super funny, the first time it got built, I was so happy. When they sent me the contract, I just signed it. And then when I reread the contract, I saw that they said they would own the intellectual property. And I was like, but I designed this system. I designed what would go into the product and how the customer should interact. Why would you own my product? I mean, like, it was such a dumb thing because uh, I didn't, double check. I didn't bother thinking, and so thankfully, again, because they were my friends, they said, okay, but the amount we charge you, assume that we would own the IP and we could resell the technology. So it's like, oh, yeah, that's not gonna happen. So they charged me double. I mean, they revised the invoice, charged me double for the platform, but then we had IP rights already. And then yun, parang from there, so outsourced yung dev team namin, and I was the de facto product head. And then the bigger the organization got, the less I was an effective product manager, to be honest. Because I wasn't focused on product dev anymore. I was focused on growing the company. I was focused on growing my team, growing the business. And so that's where para we really had to have somebody focusing on product and also have a talk with the team, yung dev team namin on the potential transition to in-house at saka potentially like bunching up the hours so that it's more economical.
Got that, got that. Thank you for that. And yeah, speaking of team composition and product development, how do you now focus on that? Kasi since you mentioned na yun nga na you're trying to focus on growing the company na, and now it's actually growing. How do you focus on the product development side, and how do you manage your team as well?
So interestingly, initially I wanted to go fully hands off. Like parang, oh, I just trust the product team to decide on what's good and then they'll run with it. Pero parang, uh, and then if parang once in a while, I'll check the platform, I'll check what's happening on the product end. And then I'd be like, why is this so complicated when it could have been so easy in the first place? Um, and I think for product managers or product related folks, parang sometimes there's that dichotomy between like really making it simple versus it has to work a certain way so that's all documented, there's metrics everywhere, etc. And so I made a mistake by saying that I was going to let go completely. And so one of our new process now is everybody can go direct to the product team to give ideas, to give suggestions, to make change requests. But then I meet with the product team every 2 weeks through a product council with the operations head. So we can evaluate what are really critical initiatives to execute upfront vis-a-vis what our product roadmap would have been without these yung parang interjections. Kasi you have a finite amount of people, finite amount of hours to work with, right? And so in one end you want to grow the product and evolve it, but in another end it has to adapt to what's really happening in the business day to day. So to be able to make decisions like that, yeah, we formed that product council where the head of operations, the product head, and myself meet to discuss. Kasi I would represent growth and the investor and the marketability. Operations would represent the actual users, especially for internal portal, our internal admin portal. And then the product head would know, okay, ano ba yung nasa pipeline? What's the situation with the developers? Ganun. So that's more or less our process.
Got it. All right.
Thank you
So
for
Dino.
sharing about yung product mo in details. So Sid, I want to know ngayon, parang kung nag-ano tayo kanina, parang macro, micro, medyo macro tayo ulit ngayon. So what do you think are decisions that you made in building Allcare that made the biggest impact on its growth?
Biggest impact? Um, I don't know. It doesn't have to be product or it has to be product related.
Di naman, oo.
Yung masasabi ko talaga kasi na biggest na talagang na-witness ko was in most startups, there's such an obsession with valuation. There's such an obsession with investor relations and how you're perceived in the market as this amazing startup, right? And I think for All Care, we didn't have any of that. Like, sure, we won some awards, we got recognized, but when you look at what I could have done as an advertiser, as a marketer, and what like what I've done, for example, with Storm, what we've done with Storm, where we were all over the place. Parang for All Care, we took it around and just focused on operation, just focused on getting one customer after another, like just making it scalable, focusing on what the market needs, how to get it done, focusing on ad operations, sales operation. And parang as a result, in 2.5 years, we're a profitable startup. In 2.5 years, without fundraising a humongous amount of money, we're hitting, revenue numbers that most startups never get to in this kind of age maturity level, diba? I think people forget that we are only a 2.5, 3-year-old startup because we launched in 2019, but we pivoted in towards the end of 2019. So effectively, we're really just a 2.5-year-old startup, diba? Um, so yun, so parang, and then all this time, yung mga tao parang, yung mga tingin nilang kasabayan natin have been around since 2015, 2016, di ba? So yun, so I think that kind of focus, again, kasi hindi naman ako product person talaga by heart. I'm a marketing and sales person, so it also translated dun sa negosyo na yun yung naging focus talaga namin, growing the business. So, there are things like people processes that are not necessarily as documented or as institutionalized, but you choose the fires that you want to let burn. Diba? Those are the fires that I chose to let burn. Pero sa growth, walang masasabi yung mga tao because we really did grow. We're growing year on year, triple digit. I mean, that's not something you see every day.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to parang highlight that point. Pareho ata natin napakinggan yun sa same audio. Ano yung letting the fires burn, diba? Something you really learned from Peter. No, sige. So ano naman ngayon? So I think it seems na parang you have really you've really reflected on yung journey ni Allcare and yung plans ni Allcare. I think you have already, parang at least midterm to long-term plans for Allcare. But if I ask you looking back, ano naman yung surprises? What surprised you as you have been building Allcare?
Isa sa mga pinaka na-surprise ako is that hindi pala pwede na gusto mo lang mag-problem solve. And so I don't want to get into too much controversial details. Pero when I took on the responsibility and perhaps to some extent volunteered for it, right? All I really wanted to do, and God is my witness, was to prove to myself that I could do it. That was really one of the major motivations of my being in all care. One, that I could do it, like really build a startup and run it. The other one is I could creatively problem solve and build an organization around it. That was my goal. But at this juncture, where investors come into play, fundraising, ownership, your exit strategy, all of these things. Hindi pala enough 'yon. Parang and if there was any regret, I wish I was a little more informed when I got into this whole thing, right? Because now looking back, ang medyo naive ko pala to have not seen those things. But I also can't say I was naive because I really didn't know any better. Um, and to some degree, I don't want to blame anybody, but you know, people did also tell me na, oy, don't do that, diba? So yun, so that's one of the surprises na parang I didn't realize that I would come up face to face with at some point. The other thing that, so on the flip side of that, one of the things that I'm pleasantly surprised with to this day is how being nice, being sincere, being genuine can get you so far in the entrepreneurial journey. Because I hear so many horror stories about entrepreneurs burning bridges, screwing people over, cutting corners, and then being like big a-holes, diba? Pero I would like to think na I chose a different path in my journey. I mean, obviously being a Christian as well. And then now, when I have problems and I come into a rut, it's so it's so good to feel that you can call on friends and they're gonna drop stuff and help you out. Whether it's money, whether it's process, whether you need backing on an investigation or what have you. Like it's so nice to be able to have no strings holding you back in doing that. Like I'm an open book. So when people get calls from me, they know it's not gonna walang ulterior motive, walang politics dyan. It's just, dude, I need help. Right? Again, going back to the story ng development. So yun yung parang I also wish more entrepreneurs would think that way, di ba? Na parang, and I always say this in my workshops or in my seminars, di ba, na every enterprise needs to be a social enterprise. There's a social aspect to everything. Um, it has to give back to the community. It has to be about nation building. It cannot be just for profit. But at the same time, social enterprises, they need to stop thinking like they're charity cases, right? That they just beg for money, expect grants. Parang they also need to think like a shrewd business manager, di ba? And so yun, so those are parang some of the surprising things that I picked up along the way.
Okay. Oh, yun. Totoo yan. I think the being genuine, being honest, being transparent is something that I've always seen in you, Cindy, but I think that's also resonated in the time na tagal na pala natin kakilala eh. Sige. So ayun. So parang given all this, no, parang a bit of reflection time. So where do you see All Care in the next year? Parang what are you most excited about sa All Care?
Um, like from a vision perspective, like I really feel like we've only scratched the surface. Today we were revisiting. I don't know when this episode will come out, but today we just revisited our pitch deck for the pitch competition that we're preparing for. And when we talked about how many users we have on the platform, and like technical member definition, not just the SME members, right? But really people that have access to all care. We were already pala up in the 80,000 plus count. Like, and parang we didn't kind of realize that. Um, and so we were like, okay, if we can convince 80,000 people to access all care and, enjoy like that kind of holistic benefit approach, whether you're shared gig economy rider, or you're an errand guy for somebody, or you're a house helper, a trusted house helper, or you're an employee in a very small business, like sky's the langit because we've only touched like the surface, diba? So in terms of vision, it's kind of exciting. Uh, Execution wise, this is where it can get a little complicated because obviously we are not necessarily financially literate country, and so we would rather buy the iPhone 14 versus buying benefits for ourselves. And then when you know shit hits the fan, we can't use the iPhone 14 to pay for hospital bills. Is people forget that. Um, and so para we have a lot of work to do in terms of education and go to market. So interestingly, we have a great team going partner to partner, making partnerships. I saw the pipeline of potential partners around the country today, and then I'm super excited. Online merchants getting a chance at worker benefits because maybe they have one or two people helping them pack. Like that stuff is exciting. And then maybe towards the end of next year, officially opening offices in Cebu, Iloilo, Bacolod, Davao, that kind of I think the Philippines is such a huge market for what we're trying to do. There's no reason to rush to go overseas as well.
Agree, agree. Okay, okay. Oh, Pats, maybe you can take it away and take us home.
Yeah, so since you talked about expanding in different provinces or in different cities around the Philippines. So, aside from that, what trends are you seeing here in the country or maybe in Southeast Asia, no, that you're curiously following?
Uh, because of the pandemic, uh, we unlocked that parang non-geography based employment. So like we have so many companies that are uh, quote unquote employing people out of the Philippines, but their corporate entities are in countries you've never heard of. So, and interestingly, because we're such a third world country that everything is quite affordable, right? When they find out that these people don't have benefits, their first question is, how can I buy one for you? And and when they find out that there's an easy to work with all-in-one platform that gives that out, it's like a no-brainer for them. So isa sa mga trend is there's a term for them, yung mga birthday, pero wala silang pake.
Yeah, may
So,
happy birthday.
tapos parang lama yung kanta nila, di ba? Ewan ko narinig niyo. Anyway, they're called professional employment organizations, PEOs.
Mm.
And it's a fast growing industry around the world, and the Philippines is one of their prime employee markets. But then again, because of how Jurassic our benefit space is, how HMO healthcare insurance space is, it's very hard for them to build a benefits program for these employees, for these non-employees. So ang option nila would be ALLCARE. So this is a trend that we're monitoring closely. And syempre yung gig work, hindi na yan, hindi na yan mawawala. I don't know anybody that if you offer them a chance to add to their income by freelancing on top of their full-time job, I don't know anybody who will say no to it, right? Everybody is now on their own an entrepreneur on top of their full-time job. So they're only gonna grow from there, maybe become an SME or diba, para be part of a contracting body, then that's an opportunity for all.
Oo,
Got
grabe,
it.
grabe. Okay.
Yeah,
Sige. Oh, go Pats.
yun na. yung question natin for every episode,
Question
no?
for the
So we
night.
asked it. Yeah. So, yun, if you were a fresh graduate today and you wanted to get a job in the tech industry, how would you go about it?
If I were a fresh grad, that feels like a lifetime ago, honestly. But I'm sure more for Dino because he's a few batches ahead. If you were a fresh graduate and you wanted to get a job, alam mo, siguro yung isa sa, because I did end up in a tech company. Telcos are in fact tech companies, technology companies. And para sa akin kasi I wasn't so focused on like what department or what job I was gonna get. Kung familiar kayo how MT programs work, parang medyo pool of talented individuals that get thrown around the company. Diba? Yun ang MT program. And so for those who really want to get into the tech industry, I would say just get in. Don't sweat too much on what job. Um, to deliver this point home, one of my friends, his name is Randall, he finished BS Math, magna cum laude from UP Manila. That's how smart he is. Sorry, he finished nursing or pharmacy, something like that, from the School of Public Health of UP Manila. And then, deep inside, he wanted pala to be a computer engineer, right? But his parents were doctors and lawyers. So, hindi nila gets yung bonsai. So, to honor his parents, he took that degree and did very, very well. As an aside, he didn't attend his own graduation where he was gonna give the valedictory speech as a rebellious move, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, and then he took some courses, like some, I don't know, Coursera. I don't, this was before Coursera, but he took like courses on coding and he applied in Amazon. And Amazon took him as a packer at somebody in the conveyor belt packing. And I remember talking to him when he was saying like, dude, it's like the worst job ever. Right? Because it was like alienating, it was like really hard work. But he got him in. And then he told the people that he really wanted to be an engineer. He was studying for it, ganyan, ganyan. And then for some odd reason, he got a chance to show off his coding skills in the help desk department. And so he was given a shot at it. And then from there, he just moved on and he's now part of the engineers of Amazon. I think your story could on and the same for me was it's not always important how we got in. It was really what did we do with the opportunity that we were given? How did we use that to really learn, flex our learning muscles, absorb every bit of life that we could in the program, and then just put in the hard work, and then finally when the time comes na makakuha kami ng chance to show off, just go for it, diba? I think especially, and I don't want to generalize because I don't like that, but we hear all of these things about the Gen Zs na parang they want the shortcut or they want a more convenient route, a little more straightforward. And I'm happy if you get that, praise God, right? Like I'm happy for you. But in many cases, you won't get that. So if you give up because you don't have a short, direct path, then there's a lot of opportunities you might miss out. So in my case, I cannot now imagine a life that is not an entrepreneur. Like me, Dino. Like this is like I would probably it would be very difficult to convince me to work for somebody now on a time, like a time result kind of setup. But I wouldn't have known this if I didn't go through everything that I went through. Right? If I was picky about the job that I took, if I told Peter, ay, ayaw ko maging sales, gusto ko marketing lang kasi ito talaga yung gusto ko. Diba? Or if I decided all care wasn't worth the gamble and just shelved it like many projects that we started in Storm. So, yun, so para, just uh, fight it out. Whatever opportunity comes your way, don't second guess it. It's anywhere near what you want to do, grab it and just make the most out of
Grabe, okay. Ako, I think ko lang kay Sins really, and to summarize, I think what Sins mentioned and want to add in, no, there's really no substitute, I think, for hard work. And I feel na, ano yun parang that gets lost in the overall glamour sometimes of certain jobs, or when you try to look at what jobs really should be. Behind that is years and hours of perspiration, tears, no? And I think there's really no substitute for being a good worker that way. So yun. And with that, we'd like to thank you, Cindy, for being on the show. We'd like to thank you for sharing your insights kahit mukhang magdi-dinner ka na, no? At may nag-happy birthday, ganyan talaga. Uh,
So nga eh.
di na
Batiin
namin,
ko mamaya. Sabihin ko, "Uy, happy birthday. Nasa podcast ka ng around the bonfire."
pwede siya makinig. Sige. And with that, maybe you can talk a bit about if people would like to connect with you or ask you questions. So where can they direct their questions to?
Sure. Number one, I just want to thank everybody for giving me this opportunity to share. I love sharing. I'm sure you guys know that already. I love sharing my journey. I love updating about my thoughts. If you want to follow me, I would recommend follow me on Instagram and on LinkedIn. on Instagram kasi parang I use it as a scratch paper kind of thing where sometimes I just put unfiltered thoughts about entrepreneurship or I connect my workouts to entrepreneurship. Alam mo yun, yung parang uh, like for example when I got COVID, like for a month I couldn't lift the same weight that I did before, and then I reflected on how that's so much like an entrepreneur where if you stop the grind you also get lost, diba? And your momentum is lost. Even 500 startups, that's their tagline: momentum builds momentum builds momentum, diba? Um, so yeah, follow me on Instagram. It's Cindy Burdette, or just type my name and I should come up. Hindi naman ako naka-private account. The other place to follow me would be on LinkedIn. Give me a follow or send me a connection request. Sa LinkedIn naman, I clean up my thoughts better. I try to really para synthesize the situation and then come up with my analysis at the end of my post. So it's a little more formal, but if you want unfiltered, unadulterated, raw feedback or input, nandun sa Instagram. Or if you want to reach me about AllCare, it's Cindy at allcare.io. If you have thoughts, you want to know about our membership, or you want to collaborate, send me an email.
Great. All right. So on behalf of me and Pats and JD who is not here, thank you Saints for
Oo nga,
coming
si
to Around the
Jode.
Bonfire.
Ay,
Oh,
JD
nga.
na nga pala.
JD na siya, JT. So with that, good night guys and have a great evening.
Thank you.